The opinions expressed are those of the host. The material is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice, and it is not intended as an endorsement for any specific investment. Visit crestmontpw.com for more details.
You're listening to The Ascent with Crestmont Private Wealth. This is Alec Walker, EVP of Financial Planning, coming to you from our Houston recording studio. The topic we're going to be discussing today is end-of-year financial planning without the year-end panic. So the lack of panic or the lack of that stress is really the key signifier here. In last week's episode, we talked a little bit about conversations that every couple should have before marriage. We touched on some year-end items there. We're going to be taking a little bit of a deeper dive today on things that we encourage our clients to be thinking about at the year-end, but not adding any additional stress. I want to be very clear here. This is not a call to action, meaning that, hey, you need to scramble, we need to meet, there's urgent things that need to occur. That's not the case. It is very common for folks, even myself, as the calendar year is turning over, maybe it's a new diet, it's new, kind of personal goals, it's New Year's resolutions. You're kind of looking at, okay, how did my accounts perform on the year? What was my total income for the year? What was, the total amount that we spent? We tend to kind of anchor these items on a calendar year basis. And it is good to look at things on an annual basis. But we also, as we talk many times in investing in financial planning, is we like to zoom out, and that good planning happens intentionally, but not urgently. So there are some things that we're going to touch on today: tax strategies, retirement planning changes, giving, budgetings, some things to kind of be thinking about at the year end. But the true planning is going to happen really over the next 30 to 120 days. So we will touch on some of those more time-sensitive tasks, but let's talk about things, kind of over the next 30 to 120 days. Again, this episode is about kind of being aware of your financial situation, but not necessarily reactive or urgent, because sometimes when we make reactive decisions, those decisions can have negative consequences. So I think this is a much more important time year end to gather information, reflect on the year, and let's start to schedule some conversations for January, for February proactively, so that we can collaborate together on what makes the most sense going forward for your own personal situation. Now, of course, there can always be those major life events, where urgent meetings are necessary, and that's what we're here for as well. You're listening to The Ascent with Crestmont Private Wealth. I'm Alec Walker. Today we're talking about the year-end financial planning without the panic. Let's talk about some items that are a little bit more sensitive, items that need to be completed before 12/31 of this year so that you can have them hit in the 2025 tax year. I would say probably the biggest item from an investment management standpoint is going to be tax loss harvesting. So what tax loss harvesting is selling investments at a loss that you can then realize that loss to offset any capital gains that you may have realized throughout the year. So as an example, maybe a client who is in retirement has sold some of their investments in a non-retirement account to live off of that money, and they've realized $25,000 in capital gains. Well, they're going to be taxed on those capital gains for the 2025 tax year. However, if they were to go in and harvest a $10,000 loss from their investment portfolio, they may be able to offset that $10,000 loss against that $25,000 gain. So they're only taxed on the $15,000 gain. So this can make some sense in certain situations. It's something that we look at pretty keenly with our clients. We actually harvested some losses earlier this year in March during some of the tariff tantrum that went on. Of course, we don't want to always harvest losses. We always tell clients, of course, we want gains in the portfolio, but when losses present itself and we know for a specific client that they may have had a very high capital gain year, that's something that we want to take advantage of. But just be aware of common mistakes such as wash sale rules and things of that nature. The second biggest thing that we're looking at for clients is Roth conversions. We did an episode earlier this fall on Roth conversions and the pros and cons of that, the benefits. And the reason why we did that episode earlier this fall is because we don't want to be pushed up against a deadline. So for many of our clients that we think a Roth conversion makes sense for, we've already had these conversations. If you think that this could make sense for you, please reach out to us and maybe let's have that discussion, see if we can fit it in before the end of the year, or let's plan ahead for that next year in 2026. And then the last two items that are going to be a bit more time sensitive, of course, there's others, but kind of the main ones is charitable contributions and gifting. So any charitable contributions where you want to itemize any deductions for the 2025 tax year must be given by 12/31 to a donor advised fund or directly to a charitable organization. I know for Charles Schwab, their donor advised funds, they put some pretty tight deadlines on getting those contributions in. I know those deadlines are coming up here shortly. So if this is something you've been thinking about doing, please reach out to us and let us know. We can help you make those contributions. And then I think, as we approach the holiday, the Christmas season, gifting to family is another conversation that we have with a lot of our clients. Wanting to gift to children, maybe it's gifting to children or grandchildren to specifically support their college savings. Make sure those gifts are completed before the end of the year and be aware of those annual gift limits and how that works. One thing to think about is gifting to, we get this question a lot from clients who maybe receive a gift from their parents and they're wondering, hey, is this going to be taxable income to me? And so just kind of be aware of those tax implications or the lack thereof in the instance of a gift. You're listening to The Ascent with Crestmont Private Wealth. This is Alec Walker talking about some year-end financial planning without the year-end stress. So we talked about some time-sensitive items. Let's talk a little bit, kind of some broader wealth planning topics. So I would say budget review and cash flow checkup. Those are one of the main things that people are taking a closer look at. You may be off work, you're at home, you're looking at how much we've spent this year and trying to cut expenses here and there. But I would say the bigger focus is on, let's set up the goals for next year. Are there any debt payoff goals? Are there any saving targets relative to, 401k, IRA contributions? Are there any, personal goals? I think a big one for us is allocating part of our budget to travel with, with our children or maybe with our parents as well. That's a personal goal that we want to use our money to spend time and spend experiences with our loved ones, our friends and family. Retirement plan contributions. So remember, those contribution limits for 401ks, for IRAs, those are actually going to be increasing next year. So for your 401k plan contributions, those are going to increase to the maximum pre-tax or Roth contribution to $24,500 plus an $8,000 catch-up for those that are 50 and older. And of course, there's even the new additional 60 to 63 catch-up contribution as well. For those that are contributing to traditional or Roth IRAs, those are increasing to $7,500 per individual, plus an $1,100 catch-up contribution for those that are age 50 and older. So we're aware of our clients that are making contributions to their traditional and Roth IRAs. So, be on the lookout. We'll be reaching out to you to talk about increasing those recurring or one-time contributions that we have. Just as a reminder, the deadline for traditional and Roth IRA contributions for the 2025 tax year, those can be made to those accounts up until April 15th of 2026. So up until you file your taxes, the tax filing deadline, that's as long as you can wait to contribute to those traditional or Roth IRAs. 401ks, of course, those are on a calendar year basis. And then another thing to think about, some 401k plans, they offer an automatic increase feature. So if you feel like you want to increase your savings, maybe turn on that auto increase to your 401k contribution. Other topics kind of outside of the traditional financial planning or investment management side of things is insurance. We all know that insurance costs have been rising, particularly on the home and auto insurance. This has kind of been across the board, but maybe review your policies. If you'd like, please feel free to engage us. We've got some great referrals in the area. I know we had a guest from USI on earlier this year talking about property insurance and home insurance and some insurance pitfalls. So we'd be happy to connect you with somebody that could review those insurance policies. And then finally, portfolio rebalancing. Unlike your 401k, which is going to have maybe some automatic rebalancing features, we take a fully discretionary approach on when we decide to rebalance for clients. So sometimes we do it at the end of the year, sometimes we do it intra-year. Year end is a common time, but it's not the only time. I'll say one thing that we're really keeping an eye on right now is being aware of capital gains, being aware of portfolio drift from our targets. And so that's something that we don't always do at the end of the year, but it's something that we could take a look at. Clients of Crestmont, of course, we handle that decision making for them, so they're not having to spend time worrying about that on their own. You're listening to The Ascent with Crestmont Private Wealth. I'm Alec Walker, talking about year-end financial planning without the year-end stress. And so I just wanted to kind of close and circle back to that non-calendar year mindset. Financial planning is ongoing, it's not seasonal. Even though we may kind of have that impetus that, the calendar's about to flip over, I need to meet, I need to make some decisions, I need to make some changes, that may not even be the case. Many strategies that we're discussing with our clients can be implemented earlier next year with no negative impact. So just to reemphasize, the best outcomes that we see for our clients come from thoughtful collaboration and not rush decisions. So what I would recommend for folks over the next 30 days is to maybe unplug a little bit from the finances. Really focus on spending time with friends, families, loved ones. I joked with Kelsey that I'm excited to enjoy some time off around the holidays, but we're going to be spending extra time working in the kitchen for the various holiday meals. But that's something we love doing. We love cooking, but the biggest joy we get from cooking is seeing the enjoyment from those that we're getting to share that meal with. So really focus on spending time with your family. Gather information. We're going to be getting year-end documents, year-end statements. We're going to be getting tax returns and tax informations in January and February next year. So let's gather that information and share it with us and reflect on what are your goals for the next year? What are things that you maybe want to change or make different? And let's schedule a meeting to go over that with all the data that you've been able to gather. So here's a suggestion. As you're gathering that data, as you're thinking, as you're pondering, reach out to us. I'd highly encourage folks to log into their client portal, upload their information securely to us through the vault so that we can be digesting that, updating their financial plans, link any outside accounts, employer 401ks, other investment accounts, so that we've got a full picture of your balance sheet, your income. Maybe start to go through your budget, not in terms of we need to make some drastic changes, but just what is our budget? What can we be planning for next year so that we can put something onto the calendar, talk through what's important to you, and have a really good plan going into the new year. I think some of the big themes we'll see next year is we're going to have, the new tax bill that was passed this summer. We're going to have our first full calendar year of those tax changes being in effect, with some tweaks that are going to be new for 2026. And then on the investment side of things, as I'm recording this now, the Fed is set to announce a potential rate cut. I think the two big themes from the investment side is what's going to happen with AI and these magnificent 7 companies, the AI spending, as well as what's happening with the Fed and interest rates. So those are some topics we're going to be discussing for next year. Please reach out to us. You can visit our website at crestmontpw.com. You can reach out to me directly via alec@crestmontpw.com. If you've got questions about planning for the end of the year and into next year, we'd be more than happy to help you. Thank you.